Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Tuesday, April 6th, 2021. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools that I've ever encountered. And these tools are gratefully available absolutely free at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the red and white bullseye, you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Rice's book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? That chapter contains a narrative description of the primary tool in this work called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And that's a tool I've been using for over 16 years to improve the quality of my life, manage my emotions, and turn any negative emotion into part of the infallible guidance system that we've all been gifted with. So we encourage people to do that. You can also download the actual worksheet process off that website. Just click on the PDF file, download it, print it off, use it as often as you'd like. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows like this one where people have been stepped through that worksheet process. And if you listen to them multiple times, it's like a tutorial. It's like a training program for how to use this tool to its most beneficial outcome. And you can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness and get access to a completely free and private app that contains that Reality Management Worksheet, an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and a copy of the Dragon Klingon game. And we hope people do that soon and often, and then give us a call if it raises questions or concerns, or you have testimonials about how the application of that tool is working positively in your life. Our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And if you call that number and press 1, it'll put a question mark by your phone number, and I'll announce you by your area code, and we can have a conversation. We're also working through the Course in Miracles workbook lessons this year, and as I've mentioned, the commentaries are getting longer and longer, so I will abridge them to some degree. Today's lesson, Lesson 96, is Salvation comes from my one self, with a capital S, self. So while I understand that for a lot of people who have a religious habit that they feed on a regular basis, this would sound like blasphemy, and yet we have to be willing to go into and question and observe for ourselves every belief that we hold or someone else tells us to hold if we're ever going to learn the truth about ourselves and our true nature and our ability to be in alignment with that true nature. So the lesson reads, Salvation comes from my one self, capital S self, the truth of who I am. The commentary reads, although you are one self, you experience yourself as two, both a good and a evil, both loving and hating, both mind and body. This sense of split into opposites induces feelings of acute and constant conflict, and it leads to frantic attempts to reconcile those contradictory aspects of this self-perception. You've sought many such solutions, and none of them has worked. The opposites you see in you will never be compatible. But one exists. The fact that truth and illusion cannot be reconciled, no matter how you try, means you use and where you see the problem must be accepted if you would be saved. Until you have accepted this, you will attempt an endless list of goals that you cannot reach, a senseless series of expenditures of time and effort, hopelessness and doubt, each one as futile as the one before, and failing as the next one surely will. Problems that have no meaning cannot be resolved within the framework they are set. Two selves in conflict could not be resolved, and good and evil have no meeting place. The self you made can never be your true self, nor can your true self be split in two, and still be what it is, and must forever be. A mind and body cannot both exist. Make no attempt to reconcile the two, for one denies the other can be real. If you are physical, your mind is gone from your self-concept, for it has no place in which it could be really part of you. If you are spirit, then the body must be meaningless to your reality. Spirit makes use of mind as means to find its self, true self expression, and the mind which serves the spirit is at peace and filled with joy. Yet, mind apart from spirit cannot think. It has denied its source, its true source of strength, and it sees itself as helpless, limited, and weak. Waste no more time on this. Who can resolve the senseless conflicts which a dream presents? What could the resolution mean in truth? Your true self retains its thoughts, and its capital T thoughts, the true thoughts, and they remain within your mind and in the mind of the Creator. The Holy Spirit holds salvation in your mind and offers it the way to peace. Salvation is a thought you share with your Creator because the Creator's voice accepted it for you and answered in your name that it was done. We will attempt today to find this thought, whose presence in your mind is guaranteed by the Creator who speaks to you from your one true self. 1 hourly 5-minute practice will be a search for the Creator within your mind. Salvation comes from this one true self through Him who is the bridge between your mind and the creation itself. Wait patiently and let Him speak to you about your true self and what your mind can do. Restored to its connection to its Creator to serve creation's true will. Begin with saying this: salvation comes from my one true self. Its thoughts are mine to use. And then seek those thoughts and claim them as your own. If you succeed, the thoughts that come to you will tell you you are saved and that your mind has found the function that it sought to lose. Your true self will welcome it and give it peace. Your true self knows that you cannot fail today. Perhaps your mind remains uncertain yet a little while, but be not dismayed by this. The joy that your true self experiences, that true self will save for you, and it will be yours in the fullness of awareness. Each time today you tell your frantic mind that salvation comes from your one true self, you lay another treasure in your growing store. So, Pam Grout's Course in Miracles experiment book, chapter 96 reads, the title is Divine Intoxication. She quotes John Lennon as saying, there are two basic motivating forces, fear and love. When we are afraid, we pull back from life. When we are in love, we open to all that life has to offer. Pam writes, remember when you were in grade school picking teams for, say, kickball or Red Rover? Even if you weren't the team captain, you knew exactly who you wanted on your team. Every single third grader knew which players were the fastest, the most daring, and the most likely to succeed in breaking through the meaty arms of the classroom bully brigade. Still today, I get to choose who's on my team, who leads the executive committee in my mind. Only now it boils down to two teams, the ego, who is the PR person for fear and limits, or love? Lesson 96 says there's no middle ground. There's no maybe. The ego and love are incompatible. They cannot be reconciled. So it's time to decide. One choice leads to lack, limitations, and more of the same. The other leads to divine intoxication. So today's lesson is, salvation comes from my one true self, capital S, self. So, our number is 563-999-3581. If you press that number, or press 1 when you call that number, it'll put a little question mark by your phone number, and I can announce you by your area code, and we can have a conversation. We have 47 minutes left, and we are anxious to hear how we might be of service to you. What would be of use to you to cover in our topic today, or discussion, or questions? What questions might you have about the tool? What question might you have about the Course in Miracles lesson? Or Pam Grout's Course in Miracles experiment comments? Or anything else you've heard in the past 10 years on this show, 5 days a week, 1 hour a day? How can we support you? I was doing some morning listening/reading, and I came across some things in the book Untamed by Glennon Doyle that I thought, if nobody puts a hand up today on the internet show, I've got to read this. And then between that time in my regular morning prep and now, I've had several thoughts about, I don't know, do I really want to read that? Is that really, do I really have the right to read that? Is that pushing things on people? And so rescue me. Press 1, and then we don't have to have this internal dialogue struggle about what we should or shouldn't share. Because, this book by Glennon Doyle, titled Untamed, is not part of the Mind Shifters Radio core curriculum, let's say. It's just a very well-written book by a very intelligent woman who's been questioning life and questioning all of the cages we put ourselves in, whether it's cultural or religious or academic. And so my inclination is to stay a little bit closer to the core work on Mind Shifters Radio and Dr. Michael Rice's work, because a couple of the things that I was so excited about sharing earlier this morning have since struck me as maybe pushing the limits and maybe introducing questions and discomfort that aren't really necessary. So at this point in time, I will opt to stay closer to the core work and talk about either the reality management worksheet process or the Mind Shifter targeted journaling tool or the Mind Goal Management Sheet, or even the EFT tapping, which I think is very, very compatible and a powerful tool. Somebody just texted that they like it when I push limits. That's because they don't have to be here to handle the pushback. Ellen, what are your comments?
Hi, Dr. Tim. Well, I was just going to say something similar. Just yesterday, I heard 2 different people say how great it is to get into discomfort, because that means you're entering into new territory, and it's always going to feel uncomfortable. But is it better to do that, or better just to stay on this even keel where life is just kind of like going along, same old, same old? And so I think, that's kind of how my life has been going. And it's like, man, I think this is not the way life is meant to be. And it's like, yeah, am I just like afraid to step out of my comfort zone? So, yeah, I was going to say something similar, that discomfort is not, I'm not really seeing discomfort as a bad thing.
Well, okay. Yeah, discomfort isn't a bad thing. I mean, that. However, it for me, the recognition that some things are harder for some people than others is important. I mean, because one of the things is let's this analogy just came to me. Let's suppose that I have a medication that's really good for certain generic problems, very common problems, and I it's tried and true for certain people with this problem. But the issue is it's got gluten in it. And some people are actually allergic to gluten, and they have a very strong negative reaction in their digestive system when they ingest gluten, whether it's GMO-induced or not. We aren't going to go into that argument. But so the situation is, do I really need to put that out there? Because there's gluten in it, it might be very offensive to some people, difficult to swallow, etc. So that's the kind of thing that was occurring to me. It's not that I question the validity of the content. It's just that certain hot-button topics have already, in our history in the past couple of years in Mind Shifters Radio, created disturbing ripples. And some of them have never been resolved. So, and some of them have to do with sexuality, and some of them have to do with religion, and some of them have to do with, natural law, some people's interpretation of natural law, and this is just the way it is. And so, here's a section from Glennon Doyle's book. The book is titled Untamed, and the section is called Questions. And she writes, recently I was holding a town hall type event in the Midwest. There were 1,000 women in the audience, a smattering of men, a few gurgling babies. After we opened up the event for questions, I noticed a hand slowly rise in the back of the room. A runner hurried to the back of the room with a microphone, slid along the pew, and asked the owner of the hand to stand. A woman with short gray hair and a gentle, serious face with deep wrinkles slowly stood. She wore a sweatshirt with an American flag and the word Grandma puffily painted onto it. Her hand shook a little as she held the mic. I loved her instantly, and she said, Hi, Glennon. I've been following your work for 10 years, and I came here to ask you a question that I'm afraid to ask anyone else. I feel confused. My nephew is now my niece. I adore him. I adore her. My granddaughter took a boy to homecoming last year and a girl this year. And now you're gay too? I don't mean any offense. It's just, why is everybody so gay all of a sudden? The room fell silent. The sea of heads that was turned toward this woman slowly turned back toward me. Eyes were wide. I felt the room's collective stress for her, for me, for all of us. Oh, God, was that offensive? Was that wrong? Is Glennon pissed? Why are everybody so gay all of a sudden? But I don't understand. They were worried that we, as a collective audience, had just crashed and burned. I knew we had finally taken off. Blessed are those brave enough to make things awkward, for they wake us up and move us forward. I said,
there you go.
Thank you for asking a question. Most of us are afraid to admit they have. Unasked questions become prejudices. Your niece and granddaughter are lucky to have you. Will you tell me your name? She says, Joanne. Okay, I do know why everybody is so gay all of a sudden. It's those damn GMOs, Joanne. A wave of laughter relief washed over the entire church. Some ladies laughed so hard tears rolled down their faces, and we all had ourselves a giant, collective, organic baptism. When the laughter died down, I suggested that we all take a deep breath. It felt so good to laugh and breathe together. Everything doesn't have to be so terrifying after all. This is just life, and we are just people trying to figure each other out, trying to figure ourselves out. After our breath, I said something like this. There are wild, mysterious forces inside and between human beings that we have never been able to understand. Forces like faith, like love, like sexuality. We are uncomfortable with our inability to comprehend or control these mysteries. So as people, we took wild faith, the mysterious, undefinable, ever-shifting flow between humans and the divine, and we packaged it into religions. We took wild sexuality, the mysterious, undefinable, ever-shifting flow between human beings, and we packaged it into sexual identities. It's like water in a glass. Faith is water. Religion is a glass. Sexuality is water. Sexual identity is a glass. We created these glasses to try to contain uncontainable forces. Then we said to people, pick a glass, straight or gay. Oh, by the way, choosing the gay glass will likely leave you unprotected by the law, ostracized by your community, and banished by God. So choose wisely. So folks, all people, decided to pour their wide, juicy selves into those narrow, arbitrary glasses because that's what was expected. Many of us live lives of quiet desperation, slowly suffocating as we held our breaths to fit inside. Somewhere, sometime, someone, for whatever courageous, miraculous reason, finally acknowledged her dragon. She decided to trust what she felt, to know what she knew, and to dare to imagine an unseen order where she might be free. She refused to contain herself any longer. She decided to speak her insides on the outside and just let it burn. She raised her hand and said, "Those labels don't feel true to me. I don't want to squeeze myself into either one of those glasses. For me, that's not exactly it. I'm not sure what it is, but that's not it." Someone else heard that first brave one speak and felt electric hope flowing through his veins. He thought, wait, what if I'm not alone? What if I'm not broken at all? What if the glasses system is broken? He felt his hand rise and a voice rise within him shouting, "Me too." And then another person's hand slowly rose, and then another and another, until there was a sea of hands, some shaking, some in fists, a chain reaction of truth, hope, and freedom. I don't think that gayness is contagious, but I am certain that freedom is. So in the name of freedom, we added more glasses. We said, okay, I hear you. Those other glasses don't fit. So here's a bisexual glass for you, and for you, how about a pansexual glass? And we kept adding labeled glasses for every letter of the LGBTQ until it felt like we'd eventually use up the whole alphabet. This was better, but not exactly right, because some glasses still come with fewer rights and greater burdens. And some people, like me, still couldn't find a glass that fit. My hunch is that folks have always been 50 shades of gay. I wonder if instead of adding more glasses, we should stop trying to contain people within them. Perhaps eventually we'll rid ourselves of the glass system altogether. The faith, the sexuality, and the gender are fluid. No glasses, all just an open sea of energies. But letting old structures burn can feel uncomfortable and disorienting. Rumbling freedom is scary because at first it feels like chaos. Pronouns and bathrooms and girls taking girls to prom, oh my. But progress is just perpetually undoing our no longer true enough systems in order to create new ones that more closely fit people as they really are. People aren't changing after all. It's just that for the first time, there's enough freedom for people to stop changing who they were or are. Progress is the acknowledgement of what is and what has always been. Progress is always a returning. Maybe we can stop trying so hard to understand the gorgeous mystery of sexuality. Instead, we can just listen to ourselves and each other with curiosity and love and without fear. We can just let people be who they are, and we can believe that the freer each person is, the better we all are. Maybe our understanding of sexuality can become as fluid as sexuality itself. We can remember that no matter how inconvenient it is for us to allow people to emerge from their glasses and flow, it's worth it. Our willingness to be confused, open, and kind will save lives. Maybe courage is not just refusing to be afraid of ourselves, but refusing to be afraid of others too. Maybe we can stop trying to find common ground. Everybody be the sea. They already are anyway. So that was one of the segments I felt compelled to share and then thought, no, I shouldn't do that. It's going to raise too much problems.
And I cannot for the life of me understand what problems it could raise. I thought that was and just, yeah, freeing, if you can really take it in.
Well, but as,
you haven't let go.
She's addressing the point that it is uncomfortable, right? Because there are many people on the planet who've been raised for decades to believe God created man, God created woman. It's just two. That's it. We got it in the Bible. It's God's word. We know this to be true. And that's what they've been raised to believe. And for those people, it's going to be uncomfortable. And I want to acknowledge that. I don't want to pretend that there's nothing to this, that everything that I read and I see and it makes perfect sense to me, I don't want to pretend, well, that's going to be perfectly comfortable for everybody. It's going to make perfect sense.
No, each
because
person
I know it isn't.
Yeah, each person needs to take it in within themselves and because we each have our own truth and maybe someone can't accept that and then that's their truth. So, like I know you've mentioned before, I mean, we can't just take everything that someone, even like that Jesus, says as truth. We have to take it within ourselves, and how does it feel for us? 'Cause maybe it is truth, but we're not ready for it. So that's perfect if we can't accept it. And when it's time, we will. So I think as long as when you're sharing, you just, precede it with, I'm not saying that this is true for you, for anyone that's listening. It's just what someone has shared in a book, and I felt compelled to share it, and I'm going to do that. But you need to have, your own discernment about it. And I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I read something in the lesson this morning that really threw me, and it was like, okay, I believe that what I'm reading here is true because we're told that it came from Jesus, and he wouldn't lie to us. But wow, it just...
So what did you read that threw you from the lesson?
I read that the mind and body are opposites. And, this is the fourth time I'm doing these lessons, and I could swear I never read that before. I mean, I must have read right over it. And, that threw me.
Well, and part of it is, in these words, what's coming through is that we've created the concept of them as separate, right? And so we conceptualize them as being separate when really there's just mind, because all of these great spiritual traditions say there is only the one mind, there is only God, there is only the creative force, there is only this thing we call love. Whatever word you want to use for it is going to conjure up a variety of different conceptions or remembrances or perceptions in your mind. But so, the thing I would caution you against is that you're saying that the meaning that resonates in you when you read that part of today's lesson is they're saying that in reality, body and mind are opposite. But the actuality is body and mind are made up words, right? And the meanings that we give them are made up and learned over centuries of misperception. So all this lesson is teaching us is that there is only the divine, and that everything is part of that flow and of that one mind. And the difficulty is that when we create a sense of self that has two, as it says here in the first line, has good and evil, that's a creation. We've experienced ourselves as having good and evil, as being loving and hating, as having mind and body. But what the essence of it is saying there is only the one. And the concept they are separate is just that, a concept. Does that make sense?
So
that they aren't in truth opposites, but our concepts about them have been created to be opposites. But in truth, okay, so Dr. Michael Rice says, if you could see what's actually here, you wouldn't see a body. You wouldn't see solid matter. You'd see a whirling mass of energy fields within energy fields within energy fields. So we have a conception about body as being the opposite of mind, and mind is being the opposite of body. But they aren't
but
separate. There isn't.
I never thought that
Ellen,
they were separate.
Ellen, say that sentence again. We were overlapping.
Oh. Well, I never did have the concept that mind and body were separate. I always thought they were joined. I guess that's why I'm confused, because
that's why I'm trying to help you out. It's not that this lesson is saying that in actuality there is separation. It's saying that we have created a belief in separation, and we've created the belief that body and mind are opposites. And what we've come to believe of as our body is basically the opposite of what we've come to believe of as our mind. They can't be reconciled. In concepts, these concepts can't be reconciled because they are concepts of things that are opposites. And this lesson is basically trying to bring you back to where you started if you were starting believing there is only awareness. There is only consciousness. There is only the one mind.
Yeah, I guess
Everything
I always
is energy.
Looked at it as body is, it comes from mind. So I never thought of it as an opposite to mind. And that's, I guess, what was confusing me. And I understand that it's not as we perceive it to be. But I guess even in my perception of it, I never thought of it as an opposite to mind. But he's saying it is an opposite to mind, right? That's what it's saying in the lesson. He's
saying it's this is how I'm interpreting it. That what it's saying, the actual word is yes, right? A mind and body cannot both exist, right? I mean that's a line right from the middle of the third paragraph of the commentary. A mind and body cannot exist. Make no attempt to reconcile the two, for one denies the other can be real. If you are physical, your mind is gone from your self-concept, for it has no place in which it could be really a part of you. If you are spirit, then the body must be meaningless to your reality. Now, as I'm reading that, but as I'm reading that, I'm saying, if I think I'm just spirit, then the concepts I hold about my body as being separate from my mind are meaningless. So try to reread that lesson instead of thinking in these concrete terms that these words are the truth and what the Course says is really true. That's just nonsense. That will have you creating as much conflict and war within yourself and within others as the Bible has over the centuries that it's been around.
Right.
And the Quran has, and the Torah has.
I mean, when I first was studying the Course, it sounded, the way I interpreted it was, oh, the body's a bad thing, the ego's a bad thing, this is what we want to get rid of. And I thought, oh, okay. But then I read other things that was like almost just the opposite of that. You have to love the body, to love the ego. Love is the only thing that's valid. And that felt so much better to me than to be trying to get rid of something.
Well, at one point in the Q&A in the darshans, I forget, it was probably in a darshan from The Way of Mastery, which is a teaching lesson that J.M. gave years after he channeled The Way of Mastery. But in one of them he said, let's be honest about this. You will never dismantle your ego. And the reason for that is because the you that would want to dismantle your ego is the ego.
Right.
It's a whole bunch of thoughts and concepts about yourself. It can never dismantle itself. So let's just be honest about this, the ego is just a part of our thought structure. It's no more real than any other thought that we have. It only has the value that we give it, etc.
Right,
so
and
let's
to think
just be
that
honest
there's
about
something
that.
wrong with it. You know, that, I mean, the ego does what the ego does, and I think, you know, that's the thing. It's like we say, well, the ego judges. Yeah, but, I mean, if you're judging your ego, then that's the ego judging itself. So
Exactly. Yeah, one of my favorite lines from the mirror theory says, "I hate the ego, Charlie." Betsy says, "I hate the ego." And Charlie says, "Well, then ego has won." And Betsy says, "What do you mean? I just told you I hate the ego." And Charlie says, "Listen, Betsy, ego doesn't care who you hate as long as you hate."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's why that felt so much better to me, to love the ego than to try and get rid of the ego. So then now when I'm going through the course, it's like I have to just keep reminding myself what sounds like, you know, asking us to, I don't know.
Dismantle the ego isn't really dismantling the ego, it's simply understanding it. At another place, it talks about how a way of mastery talks about how the conscious logical, the rational mind was meant to be a servant. It says, you know, pardon my language, a very stupid servant, but it's there for a use. It's got a purpose, right? It's to navigate through this physical realm that we're in. And so, but it's like Einstein's thing about how we're given a precious gift and a faithful servant. The precious gift is the intuitive mind. The faithful servant is the conscious logical mind. We get into all kinds of problems when we don't rely on, or we've even forgotten, the intuitive mind, that higher self, this capital S self that this lesson and the past few have been referring to. And we elevate the faithful servant, which is the ego or the conscious logical mind, we elevate it to the level of master. It's not smart enough to be our master. We create problems when we try to make it more than it was ever intended to be. We create problems when we are out of balance, when we create a sense of opposites where there are none. And we do that with our judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So I would encourage you to read back through this lesson and watch every time you try to take anything it's saying literally, and especially if it creates a tension in you, and breathe and soften and say, okay, I must be misinterpreting the meaning of this lesson. Or I'm getting it accurate, but it's pushing against a false belief I'm holding. And learn to sit with that energy rather than rush to a decision about what it's truly saying and whether or not your previous beliefs were correct or this lesson was correct. Because that's what Rilke would call learning to live in the question, in that questioning open space, in what Byron Katie would call the unknowing mind, the not knowing mind.
I don't know mind. Yeah, it's funny because when you were saying that, because my tendency is to take everything literally. And when you said that, it reminded me of some things in my childhood that my father said to me, and I just took them literally, and I was too afraid to ask because I didn't understand him. Like the one he said to me is so funny. He said, "Your eyes must be bigger than your stomach." And he would say that to me a lot. And I would think, wow. Because I knew how big my eyes were, right, because I could see them. I think, wow, is my stomach really that tiny? But that was the only, I didn't understand that it wasn't literal. And that is, my tendency is to take everything literally. So that's, I can...
That's a great one. That's a great example. And that's exactly what happens. That's exactly the kind of thing we do to ourselves and create as problems in our lives when we come from the I want to know mind. I'm going to know. I want to be right mind. I want to know.
Yeah. And I had,
know what's right.
I was taught that to not know was a very dangerous thing. You got ridiculed and belittled if you didn't know something. So, I was the kid in school that I could never raise my hand and ask a question because it meant I didn't know. I was terrified of not knowing and not understanding everything perfectly. And now, I finally learned that, hey, it's okay. It's actually better to know that I really don't know. And again, it's so freeing.
Yeah, it is. There's a world of difference to be experienced when I give up what Michael Rice has put into every worksheet, which is I give up my It's been questioned a few different times, but it's in the worksheet as I cancel my need to be right.
Mhm.
And there is a world of different life experience to be accessed when I give up my need to be right. It's far better.
It's a relief to know that I've been it is a huge relief to know that I have been mistaken all my life. I mean, that is a huge relief because that means none of the stuff that I thought was true, and it's a huge relief. That's how I perceive it. It's a huge relief to know that I have been mistaken and that I haven't been right. Because if I was right, Oh my God, life would be miserable.
Well, and your stomach would be very tiny.
Yeah, I'd fit a few peas in it every day. That would be about it. That's funny.
So try again to go back and read through the lesson and just question every time your mind wants to say, oh, literally, they're saying that body and mind are opposites. And that's just, everything that you load up into that conclusion and all the emotions with it are part of what needs forgiveness, meaning removal from your system.
Right.
So I'm assuming you're all right with this. I'm turning on the microphone for Susan, who put her hand up here.
Great discussion from beginning to end. Quick comment about the Glennon Doyle thing. I think the rub is that when we decide one group of people is more acceptable than another, then you have the class system, and some people are not treated fairly. And I think that's worthy because what we're doing is just projecting stuff, and then we're making decisions and we're hurting people. And so I'm so glad you read that. I'd forgotten that. I love that part of her book. And the second thing is, I found this lesson to be a huge relief, too, in a different way than you did, Ellen. Paragraph 2 says something about there's no reconciliation, no matter how we try, using means and methods. We just can't fix this. And I wonder if you'd even be willing and up for reading paragraph 2 again. Certainly I can read it myself, but...
You're talking about in the lesson for today?
Yeah.
Okay, so the fact that truth and illusion cannot be reconciled no matter how hard you try, what means that you use and where you see the problem must be accepted if you would be saved. Until you have accepted this, you will attempt an endless list of goals you cannot reach, a senseless series of expenditures of time and effort, hopefulness, and doubt, and each one is as futile as the one before, and each one failing as surely as the next one will. So what is your comment about that, or question about that?
No question. Just I wanted to chime in with Ellen, who was saying this is a huge relief. In a way, it's like giving up. I feel as if I'm giving up, which is a good thing here. It's like having God show me, and the other stuff has receded in its intensity. It really viscerally affected me this morning when I read it, and I've been feeling so much lighter and better because of it. I hope it sticks. One thing Michael has in his new Power Person worksheet is one of the solutions of the non-being mind is continually going to workshops and retreats and reading self-help books to fix whatever we feel is wrong, which is like the goals that Jesus mentions in this lesson, endless goals. And these can be just as a whole category be released. Of course, they're going to come up and worksheets will be necessary, but
Susan,
yeah.
let's slow down a minute and let's ask, what is the meaning that you take from paragraph 2?
That all of our efforts to figure out they're useless. You can't figure it out.
Okay, so I'm asking you that because in my mind, the way the pieces are falling together right now, this can be used to help address Ellen's quandary.
Yeah.
Right? So this paragraph says, the fact that truth and illusion cannot be reconciled no matter how you try. Right? That's the fact. Truth and illusion cannot be reconciled. There is only the truth, and illusion is something our minds create to fight against it, and they can't be reconciled.
Right.
So what is the illusion? Last lesson and this lesson, several lessons back, are trying to tell us we have the illusion that we're both good and evil, that we're both loving and hating, that we're both mind and body. That's an illusion. This sense, this illusion of being split into opposites is what induces feelings of acute and constant conflict. So we're starting in an error, and then that error leads to frantic attempts to reconcile those contradictory aspects of our self-perception. It's an error in perception that's at the root of this. Not, as Ellen's mind was telling her, that the problem is we have a mind and it's the opposite of our body.
Right.
Does that help, Ellen?
Say that again. So it's not that. It's what you said.
The problem is not that we have a mind that is the opposite of the body. That's not the problem. The problem is we have created the false perception that we are both mind and body, good and evil, loving and hating.
Okay.
And that is an illusion in our perception, and that's the problem. And once we've created that problem with an illusion of perception, no amount of racing around looking for a solution will solve that problem.
Because it's not a real problem.
That have no meaning. That's right. It's not a real problem. That's paragraph 3. Problems that have no meaning cannot be resolved within the framework that they're set. There is no separation of mind and body, good and bad, loving and hating. That's all our thought structure creating it falsely and then judging ourselves for it. So
that up for me.
Your mind was setting you off on another wild goose chase, Ellen, saying, wait a minute, this lesson just said the mind and the body are opposite. And that's not at all what this lesson is saying. At least that's what I would offer.
Yeah. Well, I believe that you're right, because when I read it, I thought, this can't be right. And it's just my interpretation of it that's incorrect. So thank you for that. But I think it's just going to show you that, like, you know, everyone has to take in whatever they hear and decide for themselves whether it feels right or not. And if it doesn't feel right, then don't accept it. Because I know I've been afraid to people say what I believed was the truth to people in the past, and then I've had this was how I met Rose, Susan. She came up. She didn't know I was thinking of, like, concerned about this, and then she came up to me. I'd never met her before. This strange woman came up to me in the park, and she said, God wants you to speak the truth about him. I was like, what? I'm afraid that, you know, like, what it might cause people to think, or, you know, I just didn't know that was something that I should really be doing. And then she said that to me, and then I read it in a book right after she left, and I was like, okay, it's like, here's my answer. I am to speak the truth, even when I feel afraid to do it. That's, you know, my discomfort.
That'll rankle some people, and that's got to be okay. Because it's the stuff in them that's resonating with what, you know, whatever you're just being honest about for yourself. So.
Exactly.
Well, I thank you both. I realize we're down to 1 minute and 20-some seconds, and I have that hard stop on Tuesdays where I need to run off to another meeting. So I will mute you both, but thank you both for the comments, calls, questions, and answers. And I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of this stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Welcome, Jeannie Rice.
Thank you, Dr. Tim. Good show. Appreciate you. All right. We welcome everybody to the